Happy New Year, and welcome to episode 11 of the Hammer, an Umpire podcast. I'm your host, Kevin Weber. We're closing out 2019 and looking forward to 2020. We should be maybe thinking about resolutions, umpiring and officiating resolutions. What are you going to be committed to this next season to make yourself better? That's really what we should be looking at. Are you going to be making a resolution that you're going to be studying your rule book more? Are you going to make a resolution that you're going to be better and learn your mechanics more intently? Are you going to make a resolution that you're going to take care of business, getting to assignments in a more timely manner, or working more games, or getting in better shape? There's lots of different resolutions we can have, but I challenge you to try to pick two or three resolutions that you can really focus on for 2020. I know I'm always talking about goals and stuff. I believe it's really important, as you might suspect here, because I'm talking about it all the time, that there's things that you're trying to accomplish. Last episode, we talked about like a 5-year plan, but you can talk about, or think about and maybe write down what you're thinking you're going to do for 2020. And we can call them New Year's resolutions, right? So, I know for sure one of my resolutions is to learn 3-man mechanics better. I've gone to camps the last several years. I'm going to get an opportunity to work some, hopefully, weather permitting, this year. And I want to make sure that I'm seriously improving those things. And I also, as I've mentioned before, I'm making a resolution to make sure that I'm doing my pause, read, react on fly balls, whether I'm working first base, third base, whatever, second base, and making sure that I'm doing that better than I have in the past. I'm going to make a concerted effort to do that and to try to work on that every game that I can. So those are a couple things I have. Always timing too. Timing is always something that everybody has to work on, and I know I have to work on it. So that's another thing, a third thing. So those are 3 things off the top of my head. I might change my mind. I got a little bit of time here before the calendar flips over, but I challenge you to do that as well. Anyway, we have a pretty good episode here. It's a little bit, maybe a little bit shorter, but it's right near the end of the holiday season. So, I'm putting together something here just for you to have right here as a New Year switches. So we're going to talk about how do you gain respect, earn respect as you move from one level to another. I got a little segment on that. I also have a segment on umpire insurance. Are you insured when you're working games? If somebody were to sue you or some other catastrophic thing were to happen. So I have a little segment on that. Appearance. How important is your appearance now? Times are always changing, so people have different views on things, and maybe they did 20 years ago or 50 years ago or something. But I have a little segment on that. And I've got an umpire spotlight segment. I've done the 10 Hall of Fame umpires, but we're going to be moving into some non-Hall of Fame umpires. But one I think will eventually be in the Hall of Fame, Joe West, will be my umpire spotlight for this particular episode to close out this year. I think this will be maybe my final episode for season 1. That's what I have listed on all the podcast platforms. I think as I start the new year in 2020, we'll call it season 2 for what it's worth. I think it's good time to switch it over. So, a short season 1, I guess, because I kind of got started on this a little bit later in the year, but I think that's the way we'll go with that. So, hey, if you're listening in your car on the way to work or something like that, I appreciate it. Make sure that speakers are working well there. You got it turned up a little bit. Maybe my volume's not as loud as the radio station or something. If you're working out or you're walking or you got earbuds in, make sure those are working well too. And hopefully I'm sounding pretty good to you. All right. So sit back and let's get going on another episode of The Hammer, an Umpire podcast. Let's talk about respect and earning respect as an official, especially if you're moving up from one level to a little bit higher level, and you might be dealing with coaches that haven't seen you before, and they have no idea what you've accomplished or not accomplished, and to you're just a fresh face that maybe isn't very good as far as they're concerned. So what kind of things can you do, well, at any level that you're working, a high level, a low level, anything in between, that will help you to earn some respect without trying to be a braggart and carry your resume around and tell everybody what you did or something like that. So maybe the first thing is just being calm, showing a calmness while you are on the baseball field. And the way to do that is, if there is a question about something or a coach approaches you, that you're a good listener. You're honestly listening to what they have to say, and trying to understand what their concern is and resolve the situation the best that you can, and not take offense to things and become not calm, more agitated, or doing other types of things, angry, whatever you might want to say, but something that's not calm, that will definitely not earn you respect if that's what you're doing when you're trying to handle a situation. That directly relates to our next thing that you need to do to earn respect, and that's approachability. By being a good listener and being calm, then you are approachable. Somebody feels like they can come and honestly ask you a situation, a question about a situation, and you're going to handle it in an approachable kind of way. I know there's sometimes when coaches are coming out all hot under the collar and everything, but that's the biggest time that you need to be calmer and in control of a situation. That's tough to do sometimes. That's why you can't really be moving too quickly from one level to another until you're able to handle those kind of situations at a lower level before you move to a higher level where things are a little bit more intense. And maybe the game action is obviously more intense and at a higher level, but also the coaches too. Because the higher you go, the more likely a coach might be, like a full-time job is coaching. This is their livelihood. And if you get that way with in your umpiring, that's pretty intense, and you have to recognize that as well. So approachability is certainly very important. A good appearance, looking the part. We've mentioned that many times on this podcast and previous podcasts, that, if you look sharp and look like you belong there, that certainly is going to help. If you're in good physical shape, your uniform is, in the kind of condition that your assigners would expect, that certainly helps you to look calm and look approachable and look like you know what you're doing, which hopefully you do anyway. All of these things should lead to our next important aspect of trying to earn respect is just having confidence. If you're doing all those other things, then you should feel confident that you belong where you're at and that you're doing a high-quality job. All right? So confidence also goes with your body language and stuff, and just knowing your fundamentals and knowing your rules and having good timing. And the more you're able to do that and do the fundamentals, the more confidence that you're going to show to the coaches and to your partners as well. Another thing is having a good background. If you're a professional, if you keep your nose clean and do things off the field that are what you're supposed to do, that's certainly going to gain confidence with other people, that they know that you're a high quality person and that you can take care of the business that you need to. And then finally, this all goes down to game management. If you're doing those things that I've already mentioned, then you're going to manage, big situations correctly, and that's going to, earn respect from coaches and players and your partners, and then eventually your assigners, that you can handle stressful situations and come out on top. So those are a few things to think about as far as trying to earn respect as you're trying to move up. Let's talk about insurance, specifically insurance that covers you while you are umpiring or officiating other sports, in case somebody decides to sue you. A player gets injured, something strange happens, whatever it may be. Are you covered? Usually, and you can look into this, most people's homeowners or renters insurance or something like that aren't going to cover something that might happen on a playing field. All right. So you may be covered under some organizations if you work high school sports. For example, I know here in the state of Michigan that the MHSAA covers officials for $1 million policy per incident if someone were to sue them or something went wrong. That's only if you're working an MHSAA contest. You're umpiring a game with that, or even if you're working basketball, football, whatever you might be doing. And at least one school is an MHSAA school. So that's great if you're working those high school sports, and you're covered there in case something goes wrong. What if you work out of that season? You work for baseball. We're talking about it, of course, like summer season. Are you covered there? Well, not through that MHSAA program. You'd have to have your own insurance. And like I say, it's likely not covered under your homeowners. I mean, you can check into that and see if you can make that happen. There are some other insurance groups out there that might make coverage for this, but you really need to do this and protect yourself. I mean, hopefully you never use it. But if something were to happen, it's worth, paying the money and making sure that happens. For a while, I had the ABUA insurance, the Amateur Baseball Umpires Association. If you go to umpire.org, you can check out the information for them. And there, you got to join there. And it's like, I think it's like $55 a year. And they give you a pretty good insurance program there. The basic membership anyway. Comprehensive $3 million liability coverage, $1 million per occurrence, which could be 3 times in a year. I hope that you don't have that. With a $1,000 deductible, okay. They have things for like lost game fees, insurance plan that covers you when you're working at, amateur baseball and softball. This is just for baseball and softball. And it lasts like a year. So that's not bad. You can increase it to their like premium one that has like a zero deductible and things like that, but that costs like some more money. So they have another plan too. But the basic thing, $55, it's like, you buy insurance for your car, you have to have a health insurance, you have to have insurance on your home or your apartment or whatever. You need to have insurance when you're officiating too, because we live in a country that people like to sue people. So stuff happens. All right. So that's one option there that is pretty good and not too much, I guess, if that's the way you want to go. And that will cover you like during the summer or when you're working. If you work college baseball, it'll cover you for that because there's nothing for that. I mean, if you're only a collegiate umpire, well, you're not covered. If somebody wants to sue you or something, then you're kind of on your own. Of course, a lot of you might be familiar with NASO. Now, NASO, the people that produce like Referee Magazine and everything, they have insurance too. If you subscribe to their magazine and go through there, you're covered. That's a little bit over $100 a year. I think it's around 110 or 20, but sometimes you can get a deal through certain organizations that you might know, so you might want to check into that and see. I know, for example, like NAIA, and I do NAIA baseball, and you can get a deal if you aren't a national member after you register through NAIA for a reduced price. Very good to do. Also, the magazine's really good. It's a lot of good stuff in there. Some of the ideas that they have in there I've used on this podcast, for example. All right. So the advantage, though, of NASA, even though it costs more than twice as much, I believe, is that you're protected for any sport that you work. So, I only work baseball. All right. But if you work football and basketball and baseball, well, then it covers you for all those. Whereas the ABUA, it's only baseball and softball. Okay. And they have a pretty good policy there as well. And the other advantage, and the thing I like, is that if you become an assigner, like I have become, you're automatically covered there as well. they have $100,000 coverage for assigners in case somebody, tries to sue you claiming that, you discriminated against him or her, or, those kind of things. And there's not many policies out there that could do that. So if you're like in good faith and you're doing the things you're supposed to do, they're going to back you and cover you for that. So I really like that, because there's some people out there that that you deal with as an assigner that are a little bit questionable at times as far as their motives and what they think. The ABUA doesn't have anything like that for the assigners. So the other thing, the insurance that Nassau has for you as an official or an umpire or whatever you might be working is $6 million per occurrence liability insurance. Provides, extra coverage for claims for bodily injury, property damage, personal injury during your officiating activities, okay, including working games, running or attending a camp, a clinic, and of course, the assigning stuff as well. So it's definitely more comprehensive insurance. But, the ABUA, if all you've got is $55 to do it and you got some kind of coverage, that's certainly better than nothing. You need to have something. You're really taking a chance nowadays, because there's all kinds of crazy stuff that happen in all kinds of sports, and they're gonna sue you. I've heard things for MHSAA. There's like a soccer game, for example, and somebody did like an illegal tackle thing. I'm not that familiar with soccer, and one of the players busted up his knee and everything, and the players or the parents are claiming that their son was a college prospect. Now they can't do this, and they're suing for all this money and everything, and they're also suing the referees and everything about it because they should have called this or that, and they're covered through the MHSAA. So if that were something that happened during the off season and not a high school sport, if you had Nassau, you'd be covered for that as well. If you didn't, you're all on your own. And I don't know about you, but I only have so much. I have my house and some other things, just regular stuff, and it wouldn't take too much, to bankrupt me, I guess. So you definitely don't want to play with that fire, for sure. You want to definitely make sure that you're covered, and that's a worthwhile thing to do. So look into those things if you want to look into your own insurance policies, and Google a few things and see what you can come up with. If you come up with something better, great. But all I'm saying is you should have something if you don't, and maintain it. All right. I suggest the Nassau. I like Nassau. I think they do a good job with it. I like what they have, and I like getting the magazine and everything as well. And I think that's very interesting. So that could be one of your New Year's umpiring resolutions. If you don't, is to make sure that you get some form of insurance so that you are protected in this crazy, legal system that we live in. All right. So take a look into that stuff.
When it comes to towing, seeing is believing. That's why Chevy Truck's advanced camera technology offers up to 8 available cameras for 14 unique views, so you can focus on the view that really matters. Chevrolet, together let's drive. Learn more about Chevy Trucks at Chevy.com. Safety or driver assistance features are no substitute for the driver's responsibility to operate the vehicle in a safe manner. Read the Vehicle Owner's Manual for important feature limitations and information.
Well, for our umpire spotlights, we've made it through all 10 current Hall of Fame umpires. So now we have to move into other avenues of umpiring and take a look at maybe some umpires that might be on their way to a Hall of Fame. So for this episode's umpire spotlight, we're going to look at Cowboy Joe West. If you're familiar at all with Major League umpires, present-day Major League umpires, then you know Joe West. And you probably know that he's a controversial figure. Well, there's no doubt about that. However, the thing I must mention, especially for those of you that think that he is not a good umpire, is that umpires know that Joe West is one of the best, for sure. He's older now. He's not in the greatest shape. and people look at that and think that he's not good or something. But if you talk to former pro umpires, and I've talked to guys that run the instruction camps and things like that, and Joe West is always in the right spot, and he's always where he needs to be to make calls, and he also is consistently the best ball strike caller in the major leagues. Still is, even at the age that he's at now. So he's done some things that are questionable throughout his career, and certainly has a personality that maybe rubs some people the wrong way, but he's earned everything that he's gotten and deserves to be where he's at, and he is on his way to the Hall of Fame in my estimation. Well, Joe West was born in 1952 in Asheville, North Carolina, and he played baseball and football when he was a kid, and he ended up being a football player at East Carolina University in 1970. He was actually a safety. Some people look at him now and wonder that. Anyway, one of the football coaches left after that season, so he transferred over to Elon College, which is now Elon University, and played there in the early 70s. He was a quarterback there, and they won 3 league championship series, NAIA, conference championships, and ended up losing in the national championship game his senior year. But he was a pretty darn good football player. He wanted to play football and baseball while in college. However, with spring practices for football, it didn't really work out, and they probably weren't as flexible at that time as they might be nowadays. And so he just decided to start umpiring. So he, while he was in college, he started umpiring high school baseball games, which is interesting because that's where a lot of us start. Maybe even not even start there. Maybe move up to that level. So he worked high school baseball games at some point. Anyway, so he's down there in the Carolinas, and of course there's a lot of minor league baseball down there. And he ended up meeting Malcolm Sykes, who was the Carolina League umpire supervisor, and he had seen him work a little bit and suggested that he go to umpire school. So he did, and he ended up graduating at the top of his class. So obviously he got a job in the minor leagues and worked his way through the minor leagues in the Western Carolina League, and then the Puerto Rican League, and then the Florida Instructional League, and the Southern League, and the American Association. And finally, he made it to the major leagues in 1976. He was a National League umpire, and he was up and down a little bit those couple of years there, and finally was a full-time NL staff member in 1978. West seems to have an ability to be in the right place at the right time frequently. Well, sometimes he's in the wrong place at the wrong time too, as far as controversy with people, not necessarily saying his umpiring skills. But in his first full season, he umpired the game that Willie McCovey hit his 500th career home run. In the same year, 1978, he was at first base when Pete Rose tied the NL record for most consecutive games with a hit. I think it was a 44-game hitting streak. He was a plate umpire when Rose broke it the following day. Then in 1981, he worked first base for Noah Ryan's 5th career no-hitter. And that same year, in 81, West, who was 28 years old at the time, became the youngest NL umpire to call in a league championship series. In 83, he got suspended. West has been suspended a few times. He was suspended for 3 days and fined $500 after a shoving incident with Atlanta Braves manager at that time, Joe Torre. Torre became angry at the end of the game, and he fouled West into the walkway outside the umpire's dressing room, and West shoved him. And on appeal, NL President Chub Finney reduced his fine to $300, but Torre also got a fine stemming from that. But he's, as everybody knows, he's not a guy to shy away from things. He's not a guy to shy away from saying something, defending himself, doing whatever he's got to do, I guess. A few years later, he was the home plate umpire during the 88 playoff game where Jay Howell got ejected. He ejected him for having pine tar in his glove. Then in 1990, he threw pitcher Dennis Cook to the ground while attempting to break up a fight during a big brawl. And, he ended up having a big to-do with the league president at the time, Bill White. But that situation was eventually resolved. In 1999, he was one of the Major League umpires that resigned during the mass resignation, and labor dispute that the umpires had with MLB. And luckily for him, he was rehired in 2002, and he's been working ever since. Since then, he umpired the 2004 playoff game where with the Red Sox and the Yankees, and his crew made the controversial, I guess, decision that police presence calmed down the crowd after a controversial call. He had some controversy in 2010 when he complained about the pace of a game between the Red Sox and the Yankees, and which is legitimate because when West came up in the later 70s, game times were less than maybe 2 hours and 25 minutes, 2 hours and 20 minutes a game for a 9-inning Major League game, and now they're well over 3 hours. And as we know, sometimes they can go 4 easily, especially if there's a playoff. And the Red Sox and the Yankees are notorious for having long regular season games. So a lot of fans think that too, but that's just the way baseball has gone, I guess, since then. Anyway, he's worked other things too. Like he was working the game that Albert Pujols hit his 400th career home run. He's worked several games that had no hitters and stuff. He worked in 2012 perfect game by Felix Hernandez. And he's managed to become the longest tenured umpire in Major League history right now. And he's closing in on Bill Clem, probably within the next year or so here, of having the most games ever umpired by a Major League umpire. If that's not a Hall of Fame umpire, I don't know what is. I mean, he's, made mistakes and had things happen, but he's definitely been a survivor as well. And that's why he's umpired 6 World Series, 3 All-Star games, 10 League Championship Series, 8 Division Series, 2 Wild Card games. He's the president of the World Umpire Association and helped them negotiate one of the biggest, the biggest and best umpire contracts that they've ever had. And Major League umpires are certainly treated much better nowadays than they have in the past. And, you can give definitely some of that credit to Joe West. A lot of umpires know him for umpire equipment, specifically the West Vest and some other equipment that he has patents for. Not just in the United States, but in like Australia, Canada, and Japan, and everything. And of course, Wilson Sports sells that now. And that's the only high-end umpiring gear that the Major League Baseball endorses, though maybe they should consider some other things. He's also known as a country music star, I guess. Certainly his umpiring has helped him to do that, but he's released some albums and stuff. That's why he gets the Cowboy Joe thing. Appeared at the Grand Ole Opry and, served as a pallbearer for Boxcar Willie and performed with Merle Haggard and other people like that. So some people, like his music, some people don't, but he has a little bit of skill there and certainly a personality to fit it. Anyway, that's the Umpire Spotlight today. Joe West, future Hall of Fame Major League umpire. I'm sure soon after he breaks the Bill Clem's record for most games umpired, he'll probably be retiring, but he's sticking around to do that. So interesting person. There's only so many characters left in the game, and he's certainly one of them. I'd like to do a little segment on appearance. Now, we've talked about appearance as far as your physical fitness and how good a shape you're in, and that certainly is important. The better shape you're in, the more convincing you can become as an official that you can do the job and be where you're supposed to be, and that it shows that you take things seriously and take yourself seriously too, because you're trying to be in as good a shape as possible. If you've got a big belly or something going out there, you might be a very good official and a good umpire and get calls better than most, but subconsciously I think that hurts you. But I'm not really talking about that so much today. I'm talking about things like beards and tattoos, which is very common in today's society, particularly for the little bit younger crowd. It used to be, even when I was growing up, that not many people had tattoos. Maybe some sailors had tattoos. Maybe some bikers had tattoos and different people like that. But now it's very common. All kinds of people, men and women, have tattoos. So that's kind of part of this of the society, and it certainly is something that umpires have as well. I mean, I know some umpires that have tattoos. Also, growing a beard is very popular right now. It's kind of a trend right now. I'm sure that it'll come and go as it does, throughout the years. But that is common as well. Now, you might see there's a couple of major league umpires that might have some facial hair here and there, but in general, they are clean shaven and their hair is fairly short, and usually they don't have a big beard. But I've seen a couple instances where that's happened. Assigners and others and trainers of umpires might have different views on facial hair and tattoos and what is expected. Some guys are a little more old school that are running things. Do they have policies that say you can't have them? I haven't really seen anything. Even in other sports, even in like the NBA, you don't really see that. You don't see people with beards and tattoos and stuff. There might be a couple guys, but I don't see guys with a whole bunch of tattoos all over their arms and stuff like that. In the NHL, they always wear long sleeves anyway, so that's not as big a deal. You don't really see many. I can't say I noticed too many referees or linesmen with beards. I don't really watch too much soccer or football, if you want to call it that. So I don't really know for sure there. NFL, you don't see it too much either. Usually guys are clean shaven, and I can't say I really noticed that many tattoos there as well. But it's definitely something that has to be considered now. But if you're a young umpire going into professional baseball and you have a bunch of tattoos, I mean, you got to get through the minor leagues in order to make it to the major leagues. So I think the higher the level you go, the more people can make a bigger deal about it, and it might separate you from getting a potential job or not getting it. Whereas lower levels, particularly let's say like JV baseball and below, we need umpires. So if a guy has longer hair, or if a guy has a beard, or if a guy has a bunch of tattoos or something, if he can do the job, you can't really afford to discriminate against people doing that, or having those kind of things, as far as their appearance and everything. And there are, of course, coaches that have beards or tattoos as well, so that's part of it, especially for the amateur youth type sports. Obviously, for professional sports, you see lots of guys with beards and tattoos in all of the major sports. I mean, NBA, there's lots of guys that have that. I'm sure NFL does too. You don't always notice it as well because of their helmets and uniforms and stuff. Baseball, all kinds of beards going on there, lots of tattoos as well. So that's definitely a more common thing when you take a look at it. So, more accepted as well. But, as far as being an assigner now, like on Arbiter Sports that I use primarily for assigning, you have profile pictures of umpires and, more of like a headshot. But, you'd notice if they have a beard. I wouldn't say I wouldn't assign somebody that had a beard if they're a quality official. And I know a few high school umpires that have beards. But it seems like if you want to move up, usually you have to be kind of clean shaven and your hair a little bit shorter on the shorter side. That seems to be the going way if you want to kind of, fit in and not stand out in a negative way. I guess that's always the thing. You want to stand out, but you don't want to stand out in some kind of negative way. So for some people, that can be negative. I'm not judging one way or another. It's just something to think about. So if you're somebody that has tattoos or is considering getting some, or you have a beard or are considering growing one, know that it could be detrimental in some ways, potentially. You just kind of know who you have to deal with, I guess. The lower the level you work, the less it's probably not going to be an impact. If you're working youth games during the summer or something like that, I mean, they're just looking for guys that have a clue what they're doing half the time. So probably not as big a deal. But if you're looking to maybe get into a higher level, high school officiating, definitely collegiate officiating, obviously pro officiating, those things definitely make more of a difference. So definitely something to consider moving forward. Well, we've reached the end of another episode of the Hammer and Umpire podcast, and as I always do, I thank you very much for sticking with me until the end. I know that's not always the case with every podcast. I do a little research here and there, and I know that people don't always listen to the entire podcast. I do. When I listen to podcasts, I listen to the whole thing. I'm kind of a completist. If I start something, I want to finish it, unless it's really awful. But I know that some people might just kind of skip around. Maybe one of the topics, that I mentioned they thought was interesting, so they kind of skip to that and just listen to that. And that's fine. Hey, it's better than nothing, right? Of course, I've been pretty happy with how this podcast has been turning out so far. I still have to work on getting some guests on. It's been a little tight time lately to do that with the holidays and stuff. But as we move into the new year, I hope that I'll have a little bit more ability to do that and get a few guest spots on here. Okay, so if you're looking for that, I am working on that. With everything else going on in life, I've got that on my agenda. Of course, most of our listeners, 96% of our listeners are in the United States, and we have listeners all over the country, which is great. But we have listeners in Canada, particularly in the Montreal, Toronto area, but also out in Vancouver. I've got some listeners now from Australia. And as I said before, we had listeners in New Zealand, Indonesia, and Slovakia, which is crazy, if you ask me. Somebody's in Slovakia. Most of the states in the United States are listening to us. We might almost have all 50 at this point. At least had a couple listeners here and there. We're on a variety of platforms now. Whatever might work for you. I know you have basically the one that you like, but Apple Podcasts and Google Podcasts, we're on that. Spotify, that's a popular one. Breaker, Castbox, Overcast, Pocket Cast, Radio Public, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, TuneIn, and I know that it works real well on the Alexa. So if you have an Alexa device, you can just ask it to play the Hammer and Umpire podcast on TuneIn or Apple Podcasts or whatever you like, and it will do it. So that's kind of nice, and usually it will pick up, if you have it stopped, it'll pick up where you left off. It does it on other podcasts too, in case you like to listen to other stuff as well. So it's been a good run so far, and like I've said before, I plan to keep this thing going. I mean, I've almost got 1,000 total plays at this point, and I have a fairly consistent audience, and that makes it worthwhile for me to do this. If nobody was listening, what's the point, right? So I'm trying to get better at it. Hopefully, you think I've gotten a little bit better, and I try to pick some timely topics and some things that are, maybe interesting to some people. And of course, I learn some stuff as well as I do it, because I got to do a little research on it. So I figured a few things out along the line myself. So I hope that you've enjoyed it so far. Feel free to contact me via Twitter or email. My Twitter is at Kevin R. Weber, 1B in Weber, and my email is spinalfusion06@yahoo.com. And of course, check out the Facebook page. I do have the Hammer Podcast Facebook page, which a lot of people have joined, and you can certainly contact me through that as well. So hopefully we'll have bigger and better things coming in 2020, and hopefully I'm giving you a few ideas to help improve your game and get you thinking about things here in the off season for most of us, unless you live in a warm climate. And I'll be bringing you a show early on in the new year. Until then, keep calling strikes.